Good day. This programme has to be about Nord Stream 2 and the recent United States-German agreement that has been made on this topic, but I'm going to state my hope that this will be the last programme I'm going to make on this topic for some time, since I hope that the events of the last few days have finally and conclusively resolved it. I say that, though, of course, it's possible that we will hear more from various parties that have strenuously opposed the building of this pipeline, both in Congress and in Europe, countries like Ukraine and Poland. But in my opinion, it is now a certainty that this pipeline will indeed be built and will be in operation this year. The German contractor, the German operator, which will run the pipeline when it is built, says that it is almost completed, 98% completed, and that it will be finished. Construction work will be finished in August, and the pipeline will be in full operation before the end of the year, bringing the long saga of this pipeline and of its construction to an end. Now, we have had this US-German agreement that is now being published and which can be found in the State Department's website. And perhaps it's important to explain why there is a United States-German agreement about Nord Stream 2, which on the face of it is rather strange, given that the United States is not a party to the contractual deals that relate to Nord Stream 2. It is not, after all, a party which is going to receive gas via this pipeline. So why exactly is it interfering and involving itself in the building of this pipeline? Well, the short answer is that the United States sought to stop the building of this pipeline. Sanctions were unrolled against it by the Trump administration, which delayed its construction. And when the new administration came to office in Washington in January of this year, it appeared determined to kill this pipeline also. All these attempts to stop the building of this pipeline, however, faced the insurmountable obstacle of German insistence that the pipeline be built and Russian determination to complete its building. Why was the United States opposed to the building of this pipeline? Well, two reasons have been suggested, which, it should be stressed, are not mutually exclusive. One, that it does not want to increase European and especially German dependence on Russian gas, and does not want to see the transit states of Ukraine and Poland cut out of what is otherwise a lucrative business for themselves. That, you could say, is the geostrategic reason. And then there is the commercial reason that the United States wants to block gas imports to Europe because it wants to export its own liquefied natural gas to Europe in place of that Russian gas. So that has been the cause and explanation for US opposition to this pipeline. And this opposition, as I said, has been extremely fierce. There have been sanctions imposed on the pipeline by the Trump administration. Sanctions, by the way, which have not been lifted, but which have not prevented its construction. And there was due to be more sanctions announced in May of this year. But in an important climb down, the Biden administration failed to impose those sanctions on the German operator, allowing the pipeline to be built. So this has now led to this negotiation between the United States and Germany over the pipeline. And its purpose, and we should be absolutely clear and straightforward about this, is to save US face. It's a fact that the United States went out of its way to try to kill the building of this pipeline. It used all the tools and levers at its disposal to do that. It failed, and failed completely. And in order to protect its face, the Germans have agreed to this agreement, which has been set out in a joint statement, which I shall now come to. And it's important to say that this is a very long joint statement between Germany and the United States, which relates to Nord Stream 2, a pipeline which, again, let me reiterate, the United States is not directly involved or concerned with. Anyway, this is what this very long statement says. It's very long. You can find it on the State Department website, but I will read it in full. The United States and Germany are steadfast in their support for Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence, and chosen European path. We recommit ourselves today to push back against Russian aggression and malign activities in Ukraine and beyond. The United States pledges to support Germany's and France's efforts to bring peace to eastern Ukraine via the Normandy format. Germany will intensify its efforts within the Normandy format to facilitate the implementation of the Minsk agreements. The United States and Germany affirm their commitment to tackling the climate crisis and taking decisive action to reduce emissions in the 2020s to keep a 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature limit within reach. The United States and Germany are united in their determination to hold Russia to account for its aggression and malign activities by imposing costs via sanctions and other tools. We commit to working together via the newly established US-EU high-level dialogue on Russia and via bilateral channels to ensure the United States and the EU remain prepared, including with appropriate tools and mechanisms, to respond together to Russian aggression and malign activities, including Russian efforts to use energy as a weapon. Should Russia attempt to use energy as a weapon or commit further aggressive acts against Ukraine, Germany will take action at the national level and press for effective measures at the European level, including sanctions to limit Russian export capabilities to Europe in the energy sector, including gas or in other economically relevant sectors. This commitment is designed to ensure that Russia will not misuse any pipeline, including Nord Stream 2, to achieve aggressive political ends by using energy as a weapon. We support the energy security of Ukraine and Central and Eastern Europe, including the key principles enshrined in the EU's third energy package of diversity and security of supply. Germany underscores that it will abide both by the letter and spirit of the third energy package with respect to Nord Stream 2 under German jurisdiction to ensure unbundling and third-party access. This includes an assessment of any risks posed by certification of the project operator to the security of energy supply of the EU. The United States and Germany are united in their belief that it is in Ukraine's and Europe's interest for gas transit via Ukraine to continue beyond 2024. In line with this belief, Germany commits to utilise all available leverage to facilitate an extension of up to 10 years to Ukraine's gas transit agreements with Russia, including appointing a special envoy to support those negotiations to begin as soon as possible and no later than September 1st. The United States commits to fully support these efforts. The United States and Germany are resolute in their commitment to fight against climate change and ensuring the success of the Paris Agreement by reducing our own emissions in line with net zero by 2050 at the latest, including the strengthening of climate ambition of other major economies and collaborating on the policies and technologies to accelerate the global net zero transition. That is why we have launched the US-Germany Climate and Energy Partnership. The partnership will foster US-German collaboration on developing actionable roadmaps to reach our ambitious emission reduction targets. coordinating our domestic policies and priorities in sectoral decarbonisation initiatives and multilateral fora, mobilising investment in energy transition, and developing, demonstrating and scaling critical energy technologies such as renewable energy and storage, hydrogen, energy efficiency and electric mobility. As part of the US-German Climate and Energy Partnership, we have decided to establish a pillar to support the energy transactions in emerging economies. This pillar will include a focus on supporting Ukraine and other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. These efforts will not only contribute to the fight against climate change, but will support European energy security by reducing demand for Russian energy. In line with these efforts, Germany commits to establish and administer a green fund for Ukraine to support Ukraine's energy transition, energy efficiency, and energy security. Germany and the United States will endeavour to promote and support investments of at least $1 billion in the Green Fund for Ukraine, including from third parties such as private sector entities. Germany will provide an initial donation to the fund of at least $175 million and will work towards extending its commitment in the coming budget years. The fund will promote the use of renewable energy, facilitate the development of hydrogen, increase energy efficiency, accelerate the transition from coal, and foster carbon neutrality. The United States plans to support the initiative via technical assistance and policy support consistent with the objectives of the fund, in addition to programs supporting major integration, regulatory reform, and renewables development in Ukraine's energy sector. In addition, Germany will continue to support bilateral energy projects with Ukraine, especially in the field of renewables and energy efficiency, as well as coal transition support, including the appointment of a special envoy with dedicated funding of $70 million. Germany is also ready to launch a Ukraine resilience package to support Ukraine's energy security. This will include efforts to safeguard and increase the capacity for reverse flow of gas to Ukraine, with the aim of shielding Ukraine completely from potential future attempts by Russia to cut gas supplies to the country. It will also include technical assistance for Ukraine's integration into the European energy grid, building on and in coordination with the ongoing work by the EU and the US Agency for International Development. In addition, Germany will facilitate Ukraine's inclusion in Germany's cyber capacity building facility, support efforts to reform Ukraine's energy sector, and assist with identifying options to modernize Ukraine's gas transmission systems. The United States and Germany express their strong support for the 3Cs initiative and its efforts to strengthen infrastructure and connectivity and energy security in Central and Eastern Europe. Germany commits to expand its engagement with the initiative with an eye towards financially supporting projects of the 3Cs initiative in the fields of regional energy security and renewable supply. In addition, Germany will support projects of common interest in the energy sector via the EU budget, with contributions of up to $1.77 billion in 2021-2027. The United States commits to investing in the 3Cs initiative and continues to encourage concrete investments by members and others. And that's the end. That's the full text. Well, a great many words, and that's always, by the way, a sign that a document is intended to say very little, but conceal the fact by talking a great deal and at great length, but to little point. Let's just unpack some of the things that have been said. Well, we read, for example, that the United States are steadfast in their support for Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence and chosen European path. We recommit ourselves to push back against Russian aggression and malign activities in Europe and beyond. And further down we read about how if there is Russian aggression, the Germans will coordinate with the Americans further sanctions which might be imposed against Russia. Well, there is absolutely nothing new about that. They've been saying that now for the last 7 years. This is simply a reaffirmation of what has been said many times. There's also a great deal of talk about supporting Ukraine, but when you actually look at the money that is being put on the table, it is very slight. Ukraine stands to lose perhaps $1 to $1.5 billion in transit fees each year from the pipeline gas, which will now pass via Nord Stream 2, and which previously was supposed to pass, or did pass, through pipelines that cross Ukraine. That, it's important to stress, is money Ukraine has been receiving each year and which it will now no longer receive. And what the Germans have agreed to, after a great deal of talk about the importance of green energy, is to provide Ukraine with 2 one-off payments, one of $175 million and one of possibly of $70 million, but the latter to depend on reforms to Ukraine's energy industry, something which Ukraine has been intensely resisting. And these one-off payments are conditional, or are supposed to be part of a transition of Ukraine's energy sector to green technologies, something which is about as far removed from Ukraine's current needs as is arguably possible to get, and which I don't think anybody who knows Ukraine expects to happen. So the Ukrainians stand to lose at least $1 to $1.5 billion in transit fees every year, and they're going to get a derisory, a very small one-off payment of $175 million from the Germans. And then, of course, there's a great deal said and much discussed about possible or potential steps to try to deter the Russians about building all kinds of green and other packages for Europe, and about protecting Europe's energy security. All of this is takes a very long time and is very long-winded, but it amounts to very little, and it simply recommits Germany to doing what it was already committed to doing. One of the strangest and most bizarre aspects of this particular document is that we read how Germany supposedly must recommit itself to the EU's third energy package, which of course it is legally committed to anyway. So again, one asks oneself, why is Germany being asked to recommit itself to something that it is already committed to? Perhaps the only part of this document which Ukrainians can take some comfort for is the German commitment to try to help Ukraine renegotiate an extension of its gas transit agreements with Russia up to 2034. But it's important to say that that is only a 10-year extension. It seems that the Germans themselves quietly accept that Ukraine will lose its position as a gas transit state by 2034 at the latest. Now, I have to make a number of very quick and straightforward observations about the last point. I've made them before. Personally, I am completely unable to understand this issue about Ukraine's right to remain a gas transit state and why the Germans and the Russians should not be allowed to cut out middlemen and deal directly with each other when it comes to gas. There seems, on the part of far too many people in the West, to be this belief, reiterated in article after article, opinion piece after opinion piece, that Ukraine has some sort of right to be a transit state. It does not, and no one should talk in that way. There may be a geopolitical interest in keeping Ukraine's position or preserving Ukraine's position as a transit state, but there is no economic interest in doing so. Both from a German and a Russian point of view, they will save money as a result of Nord Stream 2. As I have discussed in previous programs, building Nord Stream 2 not only reduces Russia's and Germany's dependence on what has up to now been an unreliable transit partner, which is to say Ukraine, it will save the Russians and by extension the Germans in the form of cheaper gas, money that is being spent on subsidizing Ukraine via the transit fees that Gazprom, the Russian monopoly, has to pay. Calculations on this can differ, but it seems to me that the Russians at least will recoup all the costs of building Nord Stream 2 within 3 to 10 years from the money that they will save in having to pay Ukraine transit fees. Now, all of this, as I said, has been set out in this joint statement. In reality, and I want to stress this again, this is an acceptance and admission by the United States that Nord Stream 2 is going to be built and that there is nothing that can be done to prevent it. All that the Germans have done is committed themselves to a single one-off payment of $175 million to Ukraine and a potential further payment of $70 million, something which will not even cover Ukraine for the loss of 1 year's transit fees that they're going to suffer as a result of the building of Nord Stream 2. And as for Germany's commitments to help Ukraine remain a transit state up to 2034, it's interesting to note that this statement does not make that an unconditional pledge. All that Germany says it will do is that it will try to use all its leverage and all its tools to persuade Russia to agree to an extension of Ukraine's position as a transit state beyond 2024. It cannot commit to doing more, and importantly, it has not committed itself in this document to closing off the gas supply via Nord Stream 2 if in 2024 Ukraine and Russia fail to agree a 10-year extension to Ukraine's position as a transit supplier of gas. So there we are, a meaningless document, a single one-off payment of $175 million from the Germans has in effect been enough to buy off US opposition to Nord Stream 2 and to ensure that the pipeline gets built. Everything else in this very long document ultimately means nothing. Now, the United States knows this perfectly well, and there are reports that they are telling the Ukrainians that they should not criticize the agreement that has been set out in this document, because obviously from the United States' point of view, a document which is intended first and foremost to be a face-saving exercise would lose its utility were it to turn out that the Ukrainians were continuing to object to it and were continuing to criticize it. The Ukrainians, however, show no sign for the moment of being appeased. Their criticism of the document, of the agreement that has been reached, is mounting, and one hears increasing talk in Ukraine of betrayal. Moreover, as I understand it, the Ukrainians have also made it fairly clear that they are deeply sceptical of the prospects of Russia actually agreeing to the extension of the transit deal beyond 2024 to 2034, and they think that the Russians, having completed work on Nord Stream 2, having completed work on Turk Stream, will now simply and quietly turn the gas that is passing through Ukraine off in 2024, and that after 2024, Ukraine's position as a gas transit state will end. Well, what of the Russians? Well, Angela Merkel telephoned Putin to inform him directly of the agreement that had been reached, and the Kremlin has provided its own readout of the call, and it reads as follows. The leaders are satisfied with the construction of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which is nearing completion. The president of Russia noted Germany's consistent commitment to implement this project, which is strictly a commercial venture and is designed to enhance energy security of Germany and the rest of the EU. Ms. Merkel told Mr. Putin about the discussion on the developments around the pipeline project with US President Joseph Biden in Washington. Vladimir Putin made his own comments on this subject. As a separate issue, the President of Russia and the Chancellor of Germany discussed the opportunity to extend the agreement between Gazprom and Naftogaz Ukraine on transporting gas via Ukrainian territory after 2024 as well, exchanging views on the domestic Ukrainian crisis, in part in the context of Ms. Merkel's meeting with the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, in Berlin on July 12th. The President of Russia focused on the markedly discriminatory law on the indigenous peoples of Ukraine that was adopted by the Ukrainian parliament. It was also emphasized that Kiev must strictly fulfill the 2015 Minsk package of measures. Vladimir Putin and Angela Merkel agreed to continue their personal contacts. Well, one can read the words about how Miss Merkel told Mr. Putin about the discussion on the developments around the pipeline project. Note the careful use of Russian words, the developments around the pipeline project with US President Joseph Biden in Washington. The Russians are refusing to acknowledge that there's actually an agreement between the Americans and the Germans about the pipeline. As far as the Russians are concerned, and contractually they are right, the only agreement is that between Germany and Gazprom. In other words, between Germany and Russia. The Americans are not a party to the pipeline project, and therefore their discussions with Germany amount only to developments. And of course, we learn that Putin made his own comments on the subject. I would love to know what they are, but notice the preceding words. The President of Russia noted Germany's consistent commitment to implement this project, which is strictly a commercial venture and is designed to enhance energy security of Germany and the rest of the EU. And then we learn that Merkel did indeed raise with Putin the possibility of a agreement between Ukraine and Russia to extend the gas transit agreement beyond 2024, but the Russian readout is careful to say that such an agreement would be between Gazprom, the Russian state gas monopoly company, and Naftogaz Ukraine. In other words, it would be a commercial agreement between two companies. It would not be an interstate agreement, implying that the Germans have no business raising this topic with them. And of course, last but not least, we have the Russians giving their own interpretations of recent events in Ukraine and about Ukraine's failure to implement the Minsk agreement. So a situation where the pipeline is going to be built, an agreement between the Germans and the Americans, which essentially says nothing, or to be more precise, nothing new, but which offers nothing more to Ukraine than a one-off $175 million payment, which will of course come nowhere close to replacing the amount of money Ukraine is going to lose every year in transit fees, and a commitment by the Germans to try to use all the leverage they have to get the Russians to agree to extend Ukraine's gas transit status by another 10 years in 2024, but the Russians making it very clear in the discussion between Putin and Merkel that such an extension is a commercial matter between Gazprom and Naftogaz, and therefore is none of Germany's business. Well, there we go. So hopefully the pipeline will be complete. The Ukrainians are furious, and as I said, talking about betrayal. Ukraine's friends in Europe are angry. So are Ukraine's friends in the United States, especially in Congress. But I, for one, hope that this is indeed, once and for all, the end of the affair. Thank you very much for joining me on this program. I look forward to you joining me in future programs, both on this channel and on our main channel, the Duran, where I do programs with my colleague and friend Alex Christoforou. Please also check out Alex's channel. You'll find links under this video. Please also look us up on our other platforms, BitChute, SuperU, and Locals, and the rest. And we have various ideas and plans for what we're going to be doing on those platforms, so please keep an eye out for them. Please also support us and help us, but to the extent that you feel you can, via PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Links again under this video, and by going to our shop and buying for yourself the amazing things that you will find there. Our magic mugs, our hats, our hoodies, our sweatshirts, our t-shirts, and all the rest. And please also, if you've liked this video, remember to tick the like button and to check your subscription to this channel. And thank you for joining me today on this tangled subject, and I look forward to you joining me again in future programs, and have a wonderful day until then.